Have you tested this tool out on yourself?
100%. Look, you dog fooding, I guess is the expression. You've got to eat your own garbage.
Why not?
Because you can.
Yeah, because you can. Are you productive, Chris?
Sometimes more than others.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the TSN Galaxy Podcast, where we ignite interesting conversations about topics that orbit in and around the Australian landscape. I'm joined today by Chris McInnes, CTO and founder of CodePulse, an intelligence platform measuring the ROI of software development teams. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Awesome. So Chris, you and I have known each other for a few years. We first crossed paths at another tech startup where you were the CTO for numerous years, and that one did quite well. So you've been around in the CTO seat for numerous years across different startups, and some that have been quite successful. Can you tell us a bit about your journey and why you have decided to make the jump into the founder's seat to build this platform?
Yeah, look, I guess like you mentioned, I've been fortunate enough to have now helped two companies scale from 0 to 200 million in revenue. And I guess both those times, 4 key questions kept coming up. I've had 2 CEOs now come to me and say, Chris, how much did that feature cost to build and ship? And I'd go, well, it was kind of like 3 developers for about 4 weeks. It's kind of Y dollars. And you go, no, I need to know how much it cost. And I totally get why, because he then wants to hold the head of product or the CPO accountable for return on investment. Software engineering is probably the most expensive team in any business, yet remains a bit of a financial black box. And you want to ensure that you're investing that time and energy into areas that are going to deliver bang for buck. If you're building an e-commerce platform and you go and spend 60 grand re-engineering your checkout, you don't want it just to be a vanity project. You want to make sure that it's going to reduce cart abandons, get more conversions, and drive revenue. That's a legitimate angle and view that CEOs should be having. Obviously, then as CFOs like yourself, Ash, coming to me and saying, well, come on, what about software capitalization and R&D tax claims? Come on, Chris, I need audits, I need data to be able to close that out. And then as a CTO with a growing team, you start to lose visibility. When you've got 3 or 4 developers and you're on the tools with them, you know exactly what's going on. You get to kind of 5, 10, 15 developers, and that visibility gets a little bit murky. And you throw into that all of the AI coding agents now and the impact that they're having, and trying to understand how they're being used. Are the adoption rates there? Are they legitimately driving velocity, or are they just driving volume and vibes? And these were 4 questions that have come up multiple times now, and I struggled to answer them. So 18 months ago, I think it was, I went to market and I started looking around. I was like, there's got to be tools, that can answer these questions for me. And I tried all the tools out there, and none of them could. I ended up, hacking together Python scripts and Power BI reports to try and get some level of insight, but that still didn't give me the granularity I was looking for, and that inspired me, I guess, to build the platform I wished existed.
Oh, that's fabulous background. And yes, I can definitely attest to that. Being a CFO, it's always interesting when you come to budget and you have to budget and sit down with the CTO about how many developers you need to build these features. And I guess you're just throwing numbers around. And do either of you really know how many people that you need? I don't think. I think you just, hope that the number comes to you.
Yeah, and it's often just instinct. But the reality is your instinct doesn't scale. And sometimes you've got to put some stronger numbers around them to support the case, to support the business case.
All right. So Chris, can you take me through what CodePulse does? A real life example in my seat as CFO. From what I understand, the tool can be used for both a CEO, a CFO, and also, I suppose, the CTO is the main candidate here. So walk me through that real life scenario of what I'd be using it for. That would be really great.
Yeah, I guess, look, it's really a tool to help engineering leaders answer those difficult questions that are going to come up from the CEO, from the CFO, from board members. At the end of the day, what the platform does is give you insights into your team performance, into where the productivity bottlenecks are, across the software development lifecycle, and it connects with all of your existing development tools, your GitHub, Jira, Linear, Azure DevOps, whatever it may be, and it ingests all of the telemetry, all of the statistical data points across your development team, and it under the hood it builds a bottom-up timesheet to give you the true hours and dollars associated with building every ticket, every feature, every epic. It's not just the human cost, but it also tracks the AI token cost. And so you can see exactly how much every feature costs to build and ship. You can use that to calculate the return on investment. You can look at, where there might have been bottlenecks in the delivery process. You can see how much AI was used. You can see how much of that feature can be capitalized as well. And you can use it to help support your R&D tax claims.
That's amazing. There's a great set of features there, and it's got lots of integrations. How does it work with data? So, being in finance, I've worked many years with large amounts of data that come in, but it's always this approach of garbage in, garbage out, where if the data coming in is not clean, the outputs are essentially not clean either. So explain, is that a bottleneck that you'll have with the platform to make sure that teams are actually recording their time appropriately, or is it doing something else?
So this is the beauty is that teams don't need to record anything around time. It generates the data points for you. I mean, and I've had situations where people said, "Well, come on, Chris, we need to roll out timesheets across your software development team," and I mean that's just a horrible thing to do, right? It's going to completely destroy the morale of your team, and you're just going to get garbage data anyway. Because at the end of the week, you're going to be chasing the team and saying, "Come on, where are your timesheets?" And they're going to go, "Well, yeah, sure, I spent 6 hours on this and 4 hours on that." And so what we're doing is connecting and ingesting the telemetry from multiple platforms, cross-referencing that in a data lake. So every time a developer starts coding, there's date timestamps on the files, there's the commits, there's the pull requests. There's so many touch points and data points under the hood within building software that can be used to kind of accurately calculate the true time and cost.
That's really important. And I'm even thinking now, building tools for our own team, where I still got the timer on, where people can easily turn it on and off, and just thinking it's probably not the way to go after talking and having this conversation with you. Gone are those days, hopefully. Yeah, timesheets. Although a lot of businesses still use it. This poses a question in my mind. The infrastructure that you've developed and how you've developed the platform and ingested all the information, is this something that you could expand to in the future for different industries? So not just for software developers, but different departments within an organization potentially?
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to getting the data points. And if you think about finance teams, they're going to have all of the touch points in SharePoint portals, Google Drives, Excel spreadsheets, accounting systems as well, your Dynamics 365s, your zeros, on when journal entries were created, and when Excel sheets were updated. So it's the same data under the hood that I could be ingested and reported on for sure.
And what happens now with AI agents or any other sort of vibe coding tools that are being used? Are those also ingested in, and how do you essentially measure and track those?
Yeah, so we connect with all of the big coding tools, your Cursor, Claude, GitHub Copilot, etc. And there's some great, statistical data points we can get out of that as well. What services the engineers are using, the frequency of the use, the number of prompts, the acceptance rates, the number of tokens used that we can cross-correlate with the work that they're doing. Even you can, some of them expose the sentiment around the prompts as well. And you can use that to kind of detect, is there frustration coming from the engineers when dealing with the AI agents, and correlate that to I guess what we do is actually group the engineers into high adopters, medium adopters, low adopters, and from there you can start to look at, okay, what's the true impact on velocity from the high AI users versus the low AI users? What's the impact on rework and bugs and defects that are coming out of it? Are people one-shotting things? Are people not reviewing the code, just pushing it into production, and then it's having to be reworked later on? It creates almost like this false economy around velocity. Are the AI and coding agents just creating volume, or are they legitimately speeding up the process? It might create the illusion that you're shipping things faster, but if you're then accumulating a ton of technical debt under the hood because of code churn, because of defects, across the medium term, you're actually going to be moving slower.
Yeah, so that whole verse of quality versus quantity is very true here.
Yeah, 100%.
How exactly are you measuring that, though? If you just want to give me more details. So say a hypothetical situation is a developer comes in, has a bunch of projects to get done or work on different snippets of code, and they're using AI to sort of assist them, and they're reviewing it, but maybe they're also not as technical as, a more senior developer, and they're just deploying the code and sure there's some bugs in it. How would you essentially be tracking that at the back end, and what would the output be for me as the CTO to see?
Yeah, so what we track is the cycle time, which is the time it takes from when you start coding on a project to when it's delivered. We look at what's called the PR cycle time as well. We track how much, we report on how much of the code was generated by AI, and then we can correlate that to the bugs and defects and also the code churn. So how much of that code had to get rewritten within a 2 to 3 week period because maybe it wasn't quite what it needed to be. And we're seeing some really interesting statistics coming out of our early adopters. It's not general across the board, but we're seeing some patterns where more junior developers, their adoption rates are much higher, which is great to see. There's a lot of people where 100% of their code is now coming from AI. Amazing. But the rework rate and the defect rates are quite high, like sitting at 20 to 25%. And that's where this kind of false velocity economy starts to come through. We're then seeing more senior engineers, maybe a little more hesitant to adopt the AI. And they're getting maybe 30, 40% of their code being generated. That's still good. But their rework rates and their defect rates are sitting single digits, 2%. Because they're taking the time, they're reviewing the code, they're cleaning up some of the slop, they're reducing the number of lines it's generated to be something potentially a bit more efficient, and properly reviewing the code before it gets committed. That's now again, that's not 100% across the board. That's not everybody, but there's definitely some patterns that we're seeing there. And if you can get those levers right, if you can get the adoption levels right, if you can get the right processes in place, if you get people, prompt engineering is the new literacy, right? If you can train people on how to write the prompts, how to create the plans properly, how to review the plans, how to review the code, that's when you really start to unlock the velocity.
Yep. Another question just following on from this, if we talk about individuals pumping out a lot of code, so quality versus quantity, it needs to have data inputs from a reviewer standpoint. So it needs to go through that quality control review to be able to have those data points to see that the code that was actually being pushed out in the first place wasn't good code and there was a lot of bugs and defects in it. So if that process, like what are dev teams doing and what are you ingesting to kind of have that sort of benchmark to be able to then go, okay, well, the velocity is actually a good standard, etc.
Well, first of all, the developers should be reviewing their code themselves before it gets committed. A lot of people are using Claude and CodePilot to do that first pass of the pull request review, and that is amazing. Like we had one of our early adopters when they've got a team of about 24 developers, and when they first connected the tooling, the first thing that jumped out was the pull request review time, the PR review time was 2 weeks. So it was taking the developers 2 weeks to get someone to review their code before it was getting pushed into production. That's a huge bottleneck right there. And the CTO was like, wow, Chris, I would have had no idea that this was a roadblock unless I'd gotten in with the squad and sat through 2 sprints with them to understand that was a real pressure point. And that's something that he could alleviate straight away, just by letting the team know, making sure the team's aware that they're communicating that the code reviews are waiting, and then implementing some of these auto review processes as well. And to be able to shave 2 weeks off your release cycle like that is, that's great impact.
Yep. Being able to measure it just enables the business to do so much more. Once you know where the bottlenecks are and the problems are existing, then you can shift and adjust. So It sounds really great. Have you tested this tool out on yourself?
100%. Look, dog fooding, I guess, is the is the expression. You've got to eat your own garbage.
Are you productive, Chris?
Sometimes more than others. Now, obviously, yeah, we're a small team at the moment. And the reality is, if you've got a team of 3 or 4 developers, you probably don't need a tool like this because you're so close to the action, you know what's going on. But once your team grows to kind of 7 or 8 developers, you might start to set up a couple of squads. You'll put a tech lead in place as well. You're then one step removed from the action. You grow to 15 developers, you're probably 2 steps removed, and that's where the visibility around these sorts of things come into play. And that's where tools like this can help make an impact.
So Chris, just highlighting developers, measuring time and productivity of developers, and other developers, you obviously have trialed your platform, but do you think there'll be a bit of fear surrounding the adoption of these tools and how developers would feel being essentially tracked or being watched for their levels of productivity in the business?
Yeah, look, it's a fair question, and I guess I get the hesitance, and I've been a software engineer myself. My whole career, I've been coding since I was a wee lad, and I get that software engineering it's a tough gig. It sits at this crossroad of being part art and part science, and I often say that being a developer is 80% banging your head against a brick wall, and about 20% going, oh, cool, that worked. And that's kind of your day. This isn't about, I guess, micromanaging developers. It's actually about giving engineering teams the visibility and credibility that they deserve, and helping highlight how complex some of the stuff is that they have to do every day. The reality is that every other team in an organization has performance benchmarks these days. Your sales team have their pipelines and conversion rates and, lead conversion rates and so forth. Your finance team will have your outstanding debtor days. Your marketing team's going to have your number of click-throughs and number of social impressions. And software engineering's kind of avoided it for the most part, except for DORA metrics. Now let's be honest, DORA is kind of like some it's metrics dressed up as insight, I guess. And there was a McKinsey study recently where they said that simply by measuring developer productivity actually had a 30 to 40% increase in output. And I guess historically it's been a big issue, like trying to measure software engineering teams. I mean, measuring lines of code is terrible. If I can write a function in less lines of code, it will execute faster. So why should I be penalized for that, right? And I've heard some horror stories about how traditional measurements can be gamed. There was a story about how LinkedIn, and this is some time ago, they were using story points to measure developer productivity, which is ostensibly the worst, right? A story point is an abstract number that a developer, makes up based on gut feeling around complexity. And so what happened was just every quarter, the developers would just increase the number of story points for every ticket, and magically productivity is on the rise. At Uber, apparently, they started measuring developers around the number of pull requests, which can be so easily gamed. And all that happened was the developers split their code and their test coverage into 2 separate pull requests, and magically productivity's doubled overnight. And I mean, from my own experience as an engineer, and this is what we've baked into the platform, I'm looking at kind of 4 key quadrants. So looking at the complexity of the work that is being done, looking at how complex the code base is and how complex the work is on top of that, looking at the velocity, like how quickly are people getting through the work. Obviously, quality is a huge driver, number of bugs and defects. And there's, generally correlations. You can move quickly, but probably have a few more bugs, or you can go a bit slower and have a lower defect rate. And then also looking at collaboration. So how well are developers working with others on the team, getting involved in pair programming and doing code reviews and those sorts of things. These are all the real contributors to a powerhouse team. And if you can get all of those levers right, yeah, that's when you're going to absolutely nail it.
The platform is live at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We did the first launch in March, and we've just onboarded our first 6 early adopters to test it out. We're getting that market feedback, and just getting ready for a bigger launch now.
That's amazing. So how long did it take you to develop the MVP, or what you've got now launched to the market? It's more than an MVP for sure, ready to go and be tested and whatnot. So how long did it take you from when you first started to till today to build the platform?
Look, the first release was probably about 3 months, obviously with AI coding assistance as well. I didn't have the latest Cord Opus end of last year when I started the build. So that's obviously an element of it. And then it was a couple of months of kind of testing and refining before going to market, finding those early adopters, getting them on board, getting them to use it, getting that crucial feedback as well from other engineering leaders on how their teams are working, what it is that's important to them to see, and building out those extra insights and dashboards. And then obviously with the AI coding agents really ramping up since January, really making that a core part of the system, like tracking the token coverage, linking the token costs to every ticket, and correlating the use of AI with the velocity, with the quality, with the complexity metrics.
Yep. So you've adopted yourself using AI. You've made mention that the tool is not really relevant for teams of 4 to 5, and more so for teams when you get to that higher end of teens, or tens, double digits. I'm just thinking, you yourself have said you've built this platform using AI as well as a few staff members or team members. So your team of 7 plus that that are going to adopt these tools, are they going to be 7 individuals, or is it 5 individuals plus 2, like a bit of AI? Like where do you see the future heading? I'm more just trying to get at the relevance of the tool for the future, where we are going to see a huge drop in the number of actual developers at businesses, and we'll see fewer developers obviously being more productive and more adoption of AI.
Well, there's some really interesting stats that came out of the United States Department of Labor, I think it was. They did a study last year on what's the impact of AI going to have across a whole broad range of different industries and job types. If you're an insurance assessor, I'm sorry, it's probably time to start thinking about a career change. People in the legal industry as well, things are not looking amazing there. But for software engineering, they were actually predicting, I think it was an 18% increase in the number of software development roles being created over the next 3 years. And my gut feeling is that that's probably right, like bang on. What these AI coding agents are going to do is democratize software development. And it unlocks or almost unleashes a huge amount of potential for new founders and new entrepreneurs. You can spin up an MVP really quickly. You can get product market fit, and then take that to venture capital firms to get funding. You don't need to go and get $1 million pre-seed funding and spin up a team of 5 or 6 developers and spend a year building out something. You can move and validate at a much faster pace. And I think the reality is that the days of 2,000 developer software engineering teams, like, they're numbered. These big giant enterprise teams, the AI is going to give birth to a whole heap of new founders, of new startups, of new ideas, with smaller to mid-sized teams that can scale and move much faster than before.
I think you're right. I actually don't see a point in time where it quietens down for software developers. I just see the need for more and more people that understand code with this vibe coding and all these AI tools available, even myself trying to do some automation for our business. And I need to now hire a software developer, to be honest. I'm thinking of it because if that person can come into the business and work with me on a daily basis to automate all the workflows that I have, and develop tools specific to the business, it would really help with productivity. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. Very relevant.
How cool is it that you can kind of rationalize and validate that idea before you have to go and hire a software developer, or have to go and hire a team, and you can give a much more targeted scope of work to get that delivered. And you're right. Like there's been some vibe coding horror stories out there where people that maybe didn't have enough experience push through with the vibe coding tools, and it's really cool. Like with a $20 subscription and some AWS credits, you can get something published really quickly. But there's been those instances where people have exposed PII data, they've exposed their Google Maps keys and had massive bills get run up. Then just simple little rookie mistakes. Now the AI will get better. It'll learn to do those things instinctively for sure. But yeah, it's still at a point where you need someone with a bit of experience just to finish off those little things before it's production ready.
Yeah, for sure. I actually watched a Google podcast yesterday, and it was the ex-Google Chief Business Officer, what is his name? Mo Gawdat. I think I'm saying it right. Might be saying it slightly incorrect, his surname. But he mentioned that he was able to launch his new tool, Emma, within 4 months or within a short period of time. I don't know if it was 4 months, maybe it might have been 6 months or 4 months, can't remember. But he said he was able, with his team, and very small team, rewrite the code 4 times in that short space of time. And I just think to myself, that's incredible. Something that would have taken, I suppose, teams in the past, maybe 2 years, and would have been very expensive as an operation to achieve, is now taking individuals and teams 4 months to do, and they're able to rewrite the code to make it almost perfect or more optimized within 4 times. It's game changing, but very exciting as well, because it means a lot of us sitting in my seat, where I'm not a tech person, I may be an accountant with a slight knack for technology, would love to get creative, and I have all these ideas in my brain that I would love to develop things, and I can sort of play around with it, like you say, and get an MVP out to market before investing that time and effort and money into a larger project. So it's a really, really exciting time.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that podcast. I'll have to check it out. But the first thing that prompts me is why did he have to rewrite the code base 4 times? What was it? Because the agents created slop? Was it because they pivoted and they wanted to take a different approach? And these are all legitimate questions that engineering leaders need to be looking at.
Yep. I can only gather that spoilt for choice is one of those answers, which I think he does mention in the podcast, and I'll flick it on to you after this as well. But yeah, spoilt for choice is really it. Why not?
Because you can.
Yeah, because you can, which is really great. And I suppose we're seeing a shift now. You're lucky, I suppose the last 18 months you said you did not have Claude Opus before, but now you do have access to those. And so you're able to obviously shift and adjust and get up to speed really fast. But you've got a lot of businesses that have written their programs on a lot of old sort of code, which was a problem 5 years ago anyway. There was a whole bunch of businesses that had old code that needed to shift and adjust to the new ways of working. So we're just seeing that again coming in. But you're in a position of strength, I suppose, having started the business not too long ago and launching your product to market with some beta testers. So what is next for CodePulse, and what excites you the most right now about the product?
Well, one of the things we're looking at, actually, I guess 2 areas. The first is something we're calling token shrinkage. If you think about Coles and Woolies, whenever products are damaged or theft takes place or spoilage of produce, they write it off and they call it shrinkage. And you've got companies spending a fortune on AI coding agents and all of these tokens, and creating competitions to see who can max out their token usage the most. But how much of the tokens are being used for legitimate business purposes, and how much token shrinkage is taking place where the companies are funding the tokens for non-work related efforts. So that's one area that we're exploring reporting on. The other is what we call shadow engineering, where there's technical work taking place, and it's probably legitimate, but is it taking place outside of the normal software development lifecycle and guardrails? Is it not being documented, not being tracked in Jira? Is code not being correctly linked to tickets so it can't be traced? I'm not saying it's illegitimate work, but those shadow engineering practices do take place, and you just need to be, I guess, aware of them and aware of the risks that they can potentially create for organizations where it may create reliance upon a single developer as a source of truth, as a knowledge base. If that person leaves or is away, can this work be supported and maintained?
That'll be very interesting. So how far away are you from getting your shadow engineering feature built out?
We've got a beta that we're testing out right now. Actually, Kevin, our CTO, has been working on it and doing an amazing job.
Incredible. All right, Chris, final question. If you're speaking directly to founders, CTOs, and engineering leaders right now, what should they be paying attention to in the next 12 months?
Oh, look, that's a good question. You know what? I'd say keep an eye on your team health and the amount of context switching that is taking place. AI is boosting productivity massively, but it's probably time to think about the human impact of switching between so many different things. And I'm saying this as a guilty party. I'm personally very guilty of running multiple agents on multiple devices in different parts of the code base, and on different projects and different features, and constantly switching between all of them has a genuine toll on energy and concentration, and context switching is probably the biggest killer of velocity and one of the biggest contributors to burnout. And I think AI is going to amplify that probably a lot more than we've seen historically. And so maybe the question to ask yourself is not how much code can we produce, but as an organization, can we absorb the speed without breaking?
I definitely have seen the impact to myself, jumping from waiting for Claude to do something for me to jumping to looking at an email to jumping back and then looking at what it's done, reviewing it and asking it for some changes, waiting for it and then jumping into something else. Definitely not great.
You think you're being efficient, but understand the impact that it's going to have on you.
Yes, definitely have a bit of mental fatigue myself, but also very passionate and excited for what we can all create as the human race now moving forward. So we'll just grab some coffee and keep going, I think. The race is on, everybody. The race is on. All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this conversation is that software engineering is evolving from something businesses simply fund into something we can finally understand, optimize, and strategically manage. CodePulse is tackling that problem that almost every modern software company faces, especially as AI fundamentally changes how software gets built. For people who want to follow CodePulse or learn more, where should they go?
Getcodepulse.com is the website. You can book in a 20-minute demo. I can show you the platform. And we're offering free trials to early adopters. It takes about 20 minutes to connect your tooling. We backfill 6 months worth of historical data, so you can start getting value and insights from day one.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Chat soon.
No problem. Thanks so much, Ashley. Great to be here. Appreciate your time.